In a candlelit room in Kyoto, two men who hated each other clasped hands for the first time, forced together by a ronin with no rank, no domain, and no right to be there. What made Sakamoto Ryoma believe the impossible was worth trying?
He set out to kill the man who would change his life. Instead, he became his student and united Japan's two most bitter enemies. How does a would-be assassin end a 700-year regime?
Ask most Japanese people to name their favorite historical figure, and the answer is often the same: Sakamoto Ryoma. His face appears on postcards, statues, and company logos. He is remembered as a visionary who saw a modern Japan before anyone else did. But strip away the folk hero, and Ryoma's real story begins somewhere far less glamorous. The son of a wealthy merchant family that had simply purchased its way into the lowest rank of the samurai class. Ryoma grew up in Tosa, a domain on the remote island of Shikoku, in a family that made its money in sake and pawnbroking, not the sword. In 1853, when he was 18, American warships under Commodore Perry forced their way into Edo Bay, ending 2 centuries of isolation. Like thousands of young samurai, Ryoma was radicalized overnight, swept up in a violent movement demanding the expulsion of foreigners and the restoration of the emperor's authority. To act on his convictions, Ryoma made an irreversible choice. In 1862, he deserted his domain, becoming a ronin, a samurai without a lord. Under Tosa law, this was punishable by death. He was now a fugitive, with no income, no rank, and no protection, free to pursue the revolution he believed in, but only one step ahead of his own execution. Ryoma's first target was a man named Katsu, a shogunate naval official notorious among radicals for admiring Western technology and advocating cooperation with the very foreigners Ryoma wanted expelled. To men like Ryoma, Katsu looked like a traitor. So in 1862, Ryoma traveled to Edo with a simple plan: to kill him. But when Ryoma arrived at Katsu's door, something unexpected happened. Katsu did not fight or flee. Instead, he calmly laid out his vision. Japan could never resist the Western powers by expelling them. Only by building a modern navy and a unified nation to match them. Ryoma listened. And by the end of the conversation, the would-be assassin asked to become his student instead. Under Katsu's mentorship, Ryoma studied naval science and Western economics, and his ambitions grew far beyond the sword. When Katsu fell from political favor in 1864, Ryoma took the vision with him, founding Kameyama Satcho in the port city of Nagasaki, Japan's first modern trading company and private navy, staffed by fellow ronin with nowhere else to belong. This company became something more than a business. The Choshu domain crushed and embargoed by the shogunate after a failed uprising, could no longer legally buy weapons. Satsuma, a rival domain with no such restriction, could. Ryoma's company began quietly buying rifles and a warship in Satsuma's name, and delivering them to Choshu instead. He was building a bridge between two domains that despised each other. That hatred ran deep. Just 2 years earlier, in 1864, Choshu forces had marched on Kyoto and been slaughtered by an alliance that included Satsuma's own army. Choshu samurai considered Satsuma a traitor to the anti-shogunate cause. Uniting these two domains was not just difficult. Nearly everyone agreed it was politically impossible. In early 1866, Ryoma brought the two domains' representatives together in a Kyoto safe house. Talks stalled for days, pride and old blood standing in the way of a deal both sides secretly needed. According to accounts of the meeting, Ryoma finally lost patience, confronted both delegations directly, and physically pushed Satsuma's envoy and Choshu's envoy to shake hands. The result was the Satcho Alliance, a secret military pact between Japan's two most powerful anti-shogunate domains. It was arguably the single most consequential political alliance in the country's modern history, and it existed because one ronin, with no domain, no rank, and no official authority, refused to accept that old enemies had to stay enemies forever. The shogunate now hunted Ryoma as a dangerous conspirator. In 1866, assassins cornered him at the Teradaya Inn in Kyoto. He survived only because his companion discovered them first and ran to warn him from her bath. Ryoma fought his way out, wounded, and escaped by boat down the river. By 1867, Ryoma had turned from soldier to statesman. Aboard a ship bound for Kyoto, he dictated an 8-point plan for Japan's future. Political power returned to the emperor. A new bicameral council, reformed laws and military, and equal treaties with foreign powers. It was a blueprint for an entirely new kind of government, written by a man with no formal position in any of it. That plan helped shape the final act. In October 1867, the last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, formally returned power to the emperor without a fight. A stunning, peaceful transfer that many credit to the political groundwork Ryoma and his allies had laid. 700 years of military rule ended not in a decisive battle, but in a signature. Ryoma did not live to see it celebrated. On November 15th, 1867, his 33rd birthday, assassins broke into the Omiya Inn in Kyoto and cut down both Ryoma and his ally. He died from his wounds within hours, just weeks after the shogunate he had worked to dismantle had already agreed to fall. The Meiji Restoration was formally declared 2 months later, in January 1868. The new imperial government Ryoma had spent his life fighting for. He never saw it. The man who united Japan's bitterest enemies and helped write the plan for its future died before the country he imagined ever officially existed. who killed him remains disputed. Suspicion has fallen on a shogunate-aligned police force, on rogue rival agents fearful of his growing influence, even on former allies. No one was ever definitively convicted. More than a century and a half later, Ryoma's assassination remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of Japanese history. Today, Ryoma is consistently ranked Japan's most admired historical figure, voted for in polls more often than any shogun or emperor. His trading company's model inspired one of his own associates, who went on to found one of Japan's largest modern corporations. Statues of Ryoma gaze out to sea from his native Kochi, forever facing the wider world he never got to fully see.
Next time on Samurai Chronicles, a widow refuses to disappear after her husband's death, and instead rules Japan from behind a Buddhist veil for 2 decades. Her name was Hojo Masako, and they called her the Nun Shogun.
Sakamoto Ryoma never held a title, never commanded an army, and never lived to see the government he designed. What he had instead was the conviction that enemies could become allies, and that a nation could be rebuilt by people no one had given permission to rebuild it. That conviction, more than any battle, is what actually ended 700 years of shogun rule.